straight dirty.
What's good, everybody? What's good? It's your boy, Cardinal Bud Crawford, or E.S. Red. That's what you won't call me. Alright, y'all, so we back for another one. New topic, y'all, new topic. The final countdown. Terence Crawford has aged, ducked, and priced out, but won't stop the Errol Spence super fight. Rematch or one and done. Alright, y'all, it's a long title, ain't it? That's a mouthful right there, my man. But a lot to be talked about, today. So, first off, go watch my last video, find out why we're about to officially get a call on this fight. I reported on it yesterday. Basically, ESPN, not ESPN, but Showtime and PBC have come to the end of their road. They've had their final countdown with Terence Crawford, and they're basically saying you either gotta put up or shut up right now, man. You're either gonna accept this fight or you're gonna go away until 2023. So we know this fight is either going to be announced or shelved once again for another year, 8 months to a year, probably playing out in 2023, most likely, if they don't make it for the end of this year, or if Terence Crawford doesn't accept the terms of whatever contract has been sent to him. Even though all the Crawford fans and a lot of just boxing fans in general are saying there is no contract, well, there is a contract. There has to be, because these people have come to the end of their rope and they're telling him either sign it or go away and we'll figure it out later. Alright, so you have that part. Now we can go deep into this fight. So we know it's going to officially either be announced or dropped or shelved. Not dropped, but shelved until next year. Okay, so now you have to start going into the scenarios of the fight. Who's actually going to win this fight? Will there be a rematch? Is this a one and done type fight? What role does Terence Crawford's age going to play in this fight? We know Terence Crawford has ducked this fight for a while now, and he's tried to price himself out of the fight to not make it. So what role is all of this stuff going to play? Let's start with Terence Crawford's age and end with rematch or one and done. Alright, so what role is his age going to play in this fight? Now, I know Crawford fans will say, well, it's not going to play a role at all, but it actually is. Whether you think it's a role that'll help him or hurt him. Some people would say, his age is going to help him in the fight because he's a smarter fighter. He's been through more fights. He's got all the experience in the world of a 35, 36-year-old fighter. And that's going to help him in the ring with Errol Spence. And then you're going to have the people that's going to say, well, he's a 35, 36-year-old fighter. He's been through tough fights. He had a tough road to hoe at 130, 140. Took a lot of damage. And could possibly be a damaged fighter at this point or at this age in his career. And maybe that's why he's trying to stall the fight out. Maybe he has some medical issues he's trying to work out or figure out how to survive the fight and not re-exacerbate an existing injury. You're going to have those portions of the fan base. Me personally, I would say it's a 50-50 of both of those things. His age is going to play a role from the experience standpoint, and it's going to play a role from he's an older fighter standpoint as well. I think the experience will help him, of course. You know, he's fought a lot of fights. He's seen everything that 140 to 130 can throw at him. But at 147, he's still very inexperienced. He hasn't fought. He's fought some elite fighters, but didn't fight them at their best. So you can't really measure him off those fights because those fighters were not at their best. And it's hard to judge where he actually ranks at 147 because he hasn't faced the stiffest competition 147 has to offer him. And I think that that's going to play a role in this fight as well once him and Errol Spence actually do step in the ring. Errol Spence has so much welterweight experience. He knows so many tactics and is a very tactical fighter himself, but knows so many tactics and ways to win a 147 fight against tough opponents, where Terence Crawford doesn't really have that experience. Even though he's the older fighter, he doesn't have that experience at 147. And some of the experiences he took from 140 can carry over to 147. But these are bigger, stronger, more versatile athletes. So whatever he did at 140 is going to be much different than what plays out at 147. So let's move on to ducking. You know, what role will the fact that Terence Crawford has ducked this fight for so long play in the actual fight when it plays out? Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, Terence Crawford never ducked Errol Spence. It was the other way around. Errol Spence was ducking Terence Crawford. He didn't accept the fight. He shouldn't have put 60-40 out there. Well, listen, if you're an elite fighter and you're supposed to be the top of the mountain, which it's funny that people call Terence Crawford the top of the mountain, yet he's not the AHAT in this fight. It's funny how they say he's the best fighter in the world, but he's the fighter asking for more money. He's the fighter who can't sell a fight. He's the fighter who's trying to negotiate a better deal. You know, really, it's almost an oxymoron and it makes no sense. But this is what people have been saying this whole time, you know, is that, and I keep rebuttaling with ESPN put him in that position, and he really shouldn't be in that position, but that's the fighter that they backed because they couldn't back Errol Spence because he's with PBC and Fox. It's pretty much plain and simple, but it's complicated because fans make it complicated and they believe everything they heard. So, you know, what role is the fact that he ducked this fight for so long going to play? I think it's going to make a huge. It's going to play a huge role because Terence Crawford's level of competition is subpar at 147 pounds. So for him not to take tough 147-pound fights and basically prove himself and having this fight on the table for so long, for nearly 2.5 years since they offered him the 60-40 split, but because he in his head and his fans hype him up to believe that he's the best fighter in the world and he's the AHAT, he's ducked this fight or he's prolonged the fight up until 2022. I would call it ducking. Some people might say he prolonged it or held out, or, you know, doesn't matter your wording. He ducked the fight until now, and he's ducked other fights that he could have took, which would have been tougher 147-pound fights, but he decided not to take those fights, and I think now he's lacking tough 147-pound experience. Now, everybody's going to pull Amir Khan and Sean Porter and Kell Brook out of their head. Well, he beat those guys. Well, one out of those three, I'll give you. And I really don't even give you Sean Porter because he was laid off for almost 2 years up until he took that Terence Crawford fight. So, really, 3 out of those 3 tough 147 fights are not even tough 147 fights. So, I would say his ducking is going to hurt him when they finally get in the ring because he's going to lack 147-pound tough experience. Now, pricing out, how's that going to play a role? I think if he would have taken the fight when it was first offered to him, it was actually a bigger fight then because the economy wasn't so messed up. So more people would have actually tuned into this fight if he would have taken it 2.5 years ago when they first offered him the 60-40 split. Then I think we'll actually tune in today. I think they can still do 300,000 buys, 350, which would be good, maybe 400. But I think back then they could have probably hit the 600, maybe even 700,000 buys if they would have made that fight. Boxing was at an all-time high then. PBC was at an all-time high then. Bob Arum was still involved, but top rank events were still selling at a high clip, a higher clip, not a very high clip, because they still had, the name was still attached to Manny Pacquiao, even though I think Pacquiao had left at this point, but they were still attached to Pacquiao, and people still went to Top Rank for Pacquiao information. So I think if they would have done it 2.5 years ago, there would have been more money involved. There would have been more fanfare involved. I think they would have sold more pay-per-views. But since Terence Crawford decided to duck and hold out for more money, price himself out, I think in 2022, because of the state of the world, the economy is all jacked up. I don't see this fight selling as well as people might think. Let's just say it does play out and it happens in October like people are reporting. I think that's a horrible time to do the fight because it's so close to two major holidays and people are going to be trying to save their money for those two major holidays, which are Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then you got New Year's coming up. So I think it's kind of a horrible time to do the fight based on that, and I think him holding out and for money for so long is actually going to hurt this fight. Now I don't want to ramble on about that too much longer. Now what are we in? What are we in when this fight finally plays out? Y'all know I'm picking Spence to win. People are picking Crawford to win. How does this play out? Rematch or one and done? Now there are two factors at play. I believe if Errol Spence wins the fight then and wins it convincingly and maybe even knocks him out or injures him like he did Ugas, it might be a one and done fight. Depending on how bad he beats Terence Crawford, it could possibly be a one and done fight. Now I know people are going to disagree with that. This is an automatic trilogy. No, my friend. If he beats Terence Crawford convincingly and beats him, breaks his eye socket and stuff like that, then you're going to immediately see Errol Spence make that push to 154. There's nothing else for him to accomplish there. And for him to sit around and wait for Terence Crawford to heal would mean he would have to start defending those titles against the Bootses, the Virgils, and the other names that are out there. So if Spence wins and wins convincingly, then I think it will be a one and done fight. Now on the other hand, if Crawford wins, and it doesn't matter how he wins, it's going to be an automatic rematch clause in there. So you're going to see Errol Spence rematch, run the fight back. Now I know there's going to be people that's going to say, well, that's not fair. How can Errol Spence just run off if he beats him only once? How can he just run to 154? He's ducking. He's scared. No, it's no point for him to stick around. Errol Spence has maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 more years in this sport, heavy, before his degradation will start from damage that he's been taking in the sport of boxing. So he's got to maximize his profitability within the next 3 years, really. So for him to, if he beat Terence Crawford, to sit around 147 for maybe a year, 8 months to a year, waiting for Terence Crawford to heal would be kind of idiotic, because he's definitely going to have to either face up with Virgil, Boots, or some other mandatory fighter that's younger and strong and at that peak, and which could be a total disaster when he can go, because those fights are not worth that much money opposed to a Charlo fight or a Canelo fight or a Triple G fight or a Pacquiao fight. You know, he could ultimately move up in weight and make huge amounts of money, and really maximize those final 3 to 4 years of his boxing career. While on the other hand, if Terence Crawford wins and knocks him out or even injures him, there's going to be an automatic rematch clause that's going to get pulled for Errol Spence Jr. And then we'll see perhaps a two-for-twofer or a trilogy out of this fight. That's why me personally, I'm saying it's going to be Errol Spence the winner, more than likely a one and done, or a one and done. Boy, y'all see that B? He tried to get me. Or a one and done for at least a year and a half. You won't see that fight. Probably a year to a year and a half, you won't see that fight run back, because Errol Spence is going to go get that bag of money if he beats Crawford and beats him convincingly. Now, Terence Crawford might opt for a rematch clause, which would be smart on his part. Even if there is a rematch clause in there, you still might not see that fight rematched for a year to a year and a half, depending on how bad Spence was to beat him. Because if he was to hurt him and injure him during the fight, you're talking 8 months to a year for Crawford to recover. There's no way Errol Spence is going to sit around for 8 months to a year just waiting for Terence Crawford when he's already waited for so long. And there's no way he's going to go face off with a Boots or a Virgil or someone like this unless it's completely necessary. And he's definitely not going to do that when you got such a huge fish in Charlo and the rest of them sitting out there. So let me know what y'all think about that down in the comment section below. Hit that like button for me. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Share. Hit me up on all the social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, YouTubes. More than likely get a response on YouTubes than any of the rest of them. So hit me up over there if that's what you want to do. It's your boy, Cardinal Bud Crawford, or E.S. Red, if that's what y'all want to call me. And we are not here.
This purple got my whole body numb and my heart hole is so cold.